Hello there, and thank you for attending today's webinar. We appreciate you being here. Today we're going to talk about automated business analysis and what is the real future of business intelligence. My name is Jennifer Ellard. I lead marketing here at Outlier, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by Sean Burns, our founder and CEO. Hi, Sean.
Hello, Jen. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining. We'll go ahead and get started, and Sean's going to take us away. But if you have any questions throughout today's recording, please feel free to ask those questions via the chat room, and we'll get those questions answered during today's call. And we'll also leave time at the end of the webinar as well for questions too. Thank you.
Very cool. I'm glad to be here with everybody today to talk about Outlier. I started this company 4 years ago to solve a problem that I saw in the business intelligence industry, which is that, today the tools available to you to turn data into decisions really focus on answering questions that you know to ask. So how much revenue are you have? How many customers are you finding? And as data is exploding from every part of the business, asking the right questions is actually the hardest part. And as I met with many companies making decisions, the most common problem they have is really staying ahead of those questions. How do you know where the hidden problems and hidden opportunities are in your data? And so Outlier is a reimagining of what business intelligence means to help focus on those questions, to say that in 10 years, we need our business to speak to us, tell us what to look for. So why can't we have that aspect today in the products that we use? And what you'll see today as I go through the product and what we do is Outlier is very fundamentally different than things you would have seen before because, again, it's focused on asking questions. It's not focused on doing what your existing tools do, which is answering them. So what does Outlier actually do? So we're a software platform that runs in the cloud. It connects the data wherever it might be. That might be in a cloud like the Adobe Cloud or the Salesforce Cloud. That might be in individual tools like Facebook ads or Google AdWords, or it could be in SQL databases and data lakes. Wherever your data lives, you spend a few minutes connecting Outlier to those data sources. You don't tell it what to look for, you don't configure it, you just point it at those data sources, and what you get in return are insights about shifts and changes in your data, questions that you might want to answer that could indicate, again, opportunities or problems. Our customers are going to include some of the biggest consumer businesses in the world, people who are tracking tens of millions of users. And why do they use Outlier? Well, we do something that human analysts can't do. A human analyst can look at maybe a dozen, 24 metrics every day, but that's a small fraction of the millions and millions of things happening in your business. If you think about your customers by age, gender, demographics, there's so many things going on. It's not possible for a human analyst to look through them all. But using artificial intelligence, Outlier can do that. It can look through every part of your business, ask every conceivable possible question, extract from those what's important, and the end result to you is a curated set of insights, key questions that you want to answer that are only 3 or 4. There's not hundreds of things here to look for. You're not overwhelmed. It's really a high fidelity experience. You get the 3 to 4 key observations in your inbox, on your phone, or on the Outlier website to help you figure out what you should be asking today to do your job more effectively. Now, the best part is since this is fully automated, it can be customized down to the individual user level. Every person in your organization may need different kinds of insights, ask different kinds of questions to do their job. So the marketing team probably asks different questions than the finance team, than the product team, even than the CEO, all the way down to the operations teams. All those people may be looking at the same data, but they have different needs. And because Outlier is fully automated, it's like giving a virtual data scientist to every single person in your organization to go through all that data and extract those key questions for them so they can do their job more effectively. Before I jump over to the demo, I want to talk about how we fit into the ecosystem. There are no shortage of tools available in the market today. We like to think about analytics like a value chain. You collect some data, you store it, then you visualize it. And that largely is how we've created value from data to make decisions for the last 10 to 15 years. And the output is a spreadsheet, a dashboard, a chart, something that's turning that raw data into meaningful insight for you. And this was okay as data started to grow, but now the data is exploding, a gap has opened up. And that gap is why we feel like organizations are frustrated, where you feel that data isn't giving you what you need. You're more reactive than proactive. It's largely because those coping mechanisms, those spreadsheets and those dashboards just haven't kept up with data as it grows. And what Outlier does with automated analysis is try to fill that gap in for you. So we aren't a reporting tool. We don't replace Tableau. We don't replace your data storage systems. In fact, Outlier lives alongside them in a very complementary way to get more out of them. So Outlier, for example, we don't replace a reporting tool like Tableau, but by asking new questions, we will actually have you get more out of Tableau. or any reporting tool that you use, because now you have a new set of questions every day to go answer with those tools. The same thing is true of data storage. You may have a data lake or data warehouse. How much incremental value do you gain by adding more and more data into it? There are only 24 hours in the day. There's only so much time a human can look through. Often there's no return on investment to put more and more data in there because you just don't have time. A system like Outlier, however, can look through all that data every day, and if there is value in it, find it for you. And in doing so, Outlier is not just on top of these, it's actually making them more valuable. So the investment in storage goes up, the investment in visualization goes up because people use them more. So not only do we generate insights that should provide value to you in finding opportunities and problems, we're also improving the value of the existing investment you've made. So this is not a replacement, it's a very complementary technology. And we see today with our customers, if they deploy Outlier, they get more out of their existing investment very quickly. So let's jump to the demo. What I'm going to show you here is how Outlier would work for a large e-commerce business. This is a real company, real data. They have 5 integrations. They use Google AdWords for marketing, 2 different analytics systems, Google Analytics and Adobe Analytics. They track things like cart additions and checkouts on the website. And 2 different databases, one that tracks inventory in different warehouses and the other that tracks revenue transactions. And 2 different databases that live in 2 different places. So imagine that we work at this company. We have spent no more than 15 minutes connecting Outlier to these data sources. We haven't told it what to look for. We haven't configured reports. We haven't done anything other than point it at these systems. I'll actually show you how that works at the end of the demo here. And really the question now is, what would our experience be? What is a day in the life of a user of Outlier after we've done this? And let me walk you through it. So the very first thing that would happen is our day would start with an email, a lot like this one in our inbox. It's going to have a handful of stories. A story is what Outlier calls an insight. And these stories are going to capture interesting observations about our data. You can see here, this first story is about our cost trending for Google traffic. It has a quick description of what happened and a chart that shows us what it captured. So these stories in this email are going to have enough information for us to triage. We can decide, maybe we're reading this on our way to work, on our phone, maybe first thing in the morning. We can decide, are there questions here I want to answer? We also see a story here about our revenue spiking from traffic from Yahoo. And again, the idea here is I drill down into these questions if I want to answer them. So let's say we want to answer this first question. Why is our cost trending for Google? We just click here and we go right to the Outlier website. And we see the entirety of the story. And again, a story is designed to tell us 3 things. The first is what happened. We didn't configure it. We didn't tell Outlier what to look for. So the first thing it has to do is tell us why. Why did it bring this to our attention? What was important about this out of the 4 million things going on that was worth showing us? So we can see here our cost is trending for Google. That's what this blue line here is. This green bar behind it, this is the expected range. For all those millions and millions of dimensions of your data, all those dimensions ranging from men over the age of 35 who live in Oakland to cost for Google ads, Outlier is modeling them to say, what should you expect in February of 2019 for this particular one of millions of dimensions? And there's no black boxes. You can see the inputs. It looks for things like weekly cyclicality, monthly trending, seasonality if it exists. And you can see here a trend is developing outside that range. So that's the what. That's why it brought it to our attention. The second part is, do I care? Is it worth my time to answer this question? So we can see here that 34% of our impressions come from Google. If I read this description right here, I see that it's gone up from 29 to 34. So it's actually getting bigger. So I probably do care about answering this question because it's becoming more and more significant. But if it was 1% of impressions or 1% of revenue, maybe I can triage it right now and say, you know what, this is interesting, but I'll come back to it if it happens again. So in this case, if I do care about what the answer is, where is the answer? Where do I find the answer to this question? So you can see Outlier also does root cause analysis for you. I can click on this one around campaigns. It's found 3 campaigns that look to be the potential root causes here. These first 2 are smaller. About 2% of the overall change in cost was driven by this one campaign that you can kind of see went from very low cost to pretty high cost very quickly. But this top campaign here, this is the smoking gun. 96% of the overall change in cost was driven by the single campaign that you can see went from almost no cost to very high cost in just 4 days. So there you go. I go to my marketing automation system, wherever I'm managing these campaigns. I can figure out, was something set up incorrectly? Did I expect this? What happened here? So I can get ahead of it. Or maybe it's not our job to solve it. Maybe what we're going to do is grab a PDF of this story or a PowerPoint ready image, or even just a link that I can share over instant messaging. Share it with my team, share it with my agency, ask them to look into this, figure out exactly what's going on. They can come back, they can comment on this story, they can tell you what they found, how it was resolved. And the story is like a living document. summarizing an incident that happened, enough context to understand it, and a summary of exactly what was found. Now, this story is the simplest kind of analysis we do. It's a trend analysis, and you saw how we went from an email to a decision in a matter of minutes. There are dozens of kinds of analysis Outlier does for you out of the box. This is the simplest kind. I'll show you a few more examples to give you a sense of the breadth of the kinds of analysis that we do. Let's look through here. This is a good story. So this is a different kind of analysis. This is called a relationship analysis. What this story is telling us is that checkouts from Adobe Analytics and our inventory for Warehouse 100 had been very highly correlated for a long time, which you'd expect, right? If you were to buy something on this website, they hopefully ship it out to you same day, and therefore your inventory and checkout should move together. Until here on January 25th, that relationship broke. Something that had been true of the business wasn't true anymore. Maybe my website analytics was broken. Maybe my inventory tracking system was offline. Something that shouldn't have happened, and luckily seems to have been fixed here on February 6th. So these kinds of relationships exist in our data today. Our businesses have these relationships across various parts that are happening, and sometimes we know they exist and sometimes we don't. But the great thing here is Outlier is automatically monitoring all those relationships across these millions of parts of our business. We don't tell it what to look for. It's going to find these things for us, even if we don't know that they're there. The better part is that these two data sources, Adobe Analytics and our database, live in two different places. You know, Adobe lives in the Adobe cloud. This database lives in our database systems. You don't have to have some sort of single data source that has everything linked together to use Outlier. It's designed for a heterogeneous environment where your data lives in many different places and can find these relationships between those different systems automatically for you. Now, this is a powerful kind of analysis, but it still gives you triage context. It still lets you drill down if you want. You can still comment on it and export it. All of our stories have those things in common, but you're seeing here a different kind of analysis in the form of relationships. Here's another good one. This is data quality. Outlier automatically does data quality analysis for you. Data quality is, of course, a scourge of today's tools. Many tools rely on your data being perfect, and it's very difficult to get perfect data. Outlier doesn't rely on perfect data. In fact, we're designing a world where you may have issues. Some of our customers, one of the biggest challenges they face is data quality. And because Outlier is already looking at all those millions of dimensions of your data, it can find these data quality problems for you very quickly, easily, and hopefully before somebody else makes a decision based on bad data. So many of our customers will use these kinds of stories that identify things like missing data or corrupted data so that the data engineering team or the infrastructure team can fix those problems before an executive makes a decision based on a dashboard that may be incorrect. And again, we didn't configure these. We just pointed at a data set. We begin to get these stories. We can export them, comment on. All of our stories have those things in common. Now, I won't go through all the different kinds of stories, but I will highlight something that I'm sure you're wondering about, which is how does Outlier figure out what 4 stories to show me out of the 4 million things happening in our data? Which is a good question because, of course, there's no mathematical definition of interesting. So what Outlier has been doing for the last 4 years is learning from watching humans. So learning by watching people read stories and share them, collaborating together. And in doing so, if you were to integrate Outlier today, you'll have a very good experience tomorrow because you benefit from the aggregate learnings across all of our customers. Outlier's learned a lot about what humans care about, and in doing so, you benefit from that. But the best news is over the first week or 2 of using the product, your experience will go from pretty good to excellent because it'll learn about you and your business and your needs and your data. And so Outlier is much unlike existing tools, which require a lot of configuration, a lot of setup. All you need to do with Outlier is teach it what you care about. And it starts out being pretty smart. So you're teaching a system that's already pretty smart how to be smarter. But that's why you can get up and running with Outlier in minutes, is that you don't need to worry about configuring it. A lot of that learning has already happened, and whatever learning needs to happen happens very quickly for you. It also is why Outlier is fully integrated into your workflow. This feed of stories you see here on the website, just like over the email that we started out with, is configurable, right? Each person in your organization can have a different feed. It can learn different things about them. Each team can share a feed. You can have feeds for different use cases. It's a nearly infinitely flexible format that can absorb your needs and adjust to your workflows. Outlier is designed to fit into however you might want to work and includes executives who care about getting weekly and monthly updates about big shifts in the business, all the way down to the operations team that's worried about everything that's happening hour by hour, day by day, so they can make sure they move the needle and improve the business. Outlier is designed to fit into whatever your business might want to work. I want to highlight there are no black boxes here, as I said at the beginning. So you can search through all those millions of dimensions of your business right here in the Outlier product. So let's say I care about California. I can search across all the results from any one of the integrations that I've integrated that has information about California. I can search about, say, page views and pull up not just historical data from the recent past, it goes back years. And this way you can view not just how Outlier built up seasonality models and other trends, but also historical stories. What's happened maybe back in December that we didn't realize was important in December, but now we actually realize is pretty important. Likewise, you can also see that Outlier sees the world in terms of things like days, weeks, months, different kinds of time periods. And it's a combination of all these different factors that gives Outlier a very high fidelity experience for you by looking at your business in many, many, many different ways at the same time. So even though there may be 3,000 to 4,000 stories generated for you every day, and Outlier picks the 3 to 4 out of that you're most likely to find useful, it doesn't throw away the rest of them. They're here and available in the search engine for you to pluck up and use. And it's just part of the product. And it allows you to pull back the curtain to decide for yourself, is Outlier doing all the things that I tell you that it's doing and doing it in a way that's useful for your business? The last thing I want to highlight is the integrations. We support a number of the major cloud tools. If you want to use Facebook ads, it's a single click to grant permission. Same thing with Google Analytics. If you use more advanced tools like Zendesk, you just have to drop in some credentials so that we can connect to it. Same thing with a tool like MailChimp. That's really the only step in the integration. In many cases, the marketing team, the product team is configuring Outlier themselves without the need for the engineering team. If you have any sort of SQL compliant data set, we support that as well. You just have to tell us how to connect to it, and you're off to the races. This probably does require your engineering team just to know how to connect to the database. We, of course, support any sort of secure connection criteria, but there is no other step. You just kind of point us to the database and tell us to go off the races, and Outlier is going to analyze that data for you. And so this means that you can now not only integrate data and start analyzing it quickly with low cost to you, it also means you can be experimental. Many of our customers use Outlier to analyze data sets that they've never analyzed before because it's never been cost effective. There's never been enough time, enough manual resources to look through everything. So they just put it to the side. But by lowering the cost of analysis so far, Outlier allows you to be experimental, to toss data in to see if there's insights in there. Maybe there aren't. Maybe there's no value, but maybe there is. And we find a lot of companies are doing things like finding data in their customer support systems that's benefiting the marketing department, or finding data in their financial data that's actually benefiting the product team. And so by reducing the lines of analysis, you open up new growth opportunities in new aspects of your business. So that's what I wanted to show you in the Outlier product. That's what we do today. I want to quickly highlight an example of how this kind of story can impact your business. And what I'll do that is an example here. This is a story pretty similar to that first story we saw. It's a trend story talking about a trend, in this case, fountain drinks for a specific store. This is from one of the largest fast food restaurants in the world. This is the kind of fast food chain that has tens of thousands of restaurants. They sell hundreds of items per store. No one is going through looking at every item in every store to do that kind of analysis. But Outlier now that's deployed brings stories like this to their leadership team. So a general manager saw this story talking about total fountain drinks for a specific store. You can see here that historically fountain drink sales had been pretty flat and then went to zero because that store was closed for about 3 weeks. When it opened up, fountain drinks are being sold at twice the rate. So what happened there? Fountain drinks are the highest margin item you sell in a fast food restaurant. What happened to cause fountain drink sales to double? Because again, the general manager never would have noticed this. So the story was brought to them. The general manager called up that store manager saying, hey, listen, what happened? It turns out this store was closed for water damage. They needed some renovations to fix it up. And after the renovations were done, they did not set the store back to the same layout it had had before. The store was laid out differently just by a factor of the work that had been done. So inadvertently, the store had discovered a layout that was much more conducive to selling fountain drinks. In fact, almost double the number of fountain drinks as before. So this is exciting because now this company can look at rolling this out to many different locations with the potential of doubling fountain drink sales everywhere. And this kind of opportunity is hiding in the data every day. They never would have found this manually. This kind of insight is only available through automated analysis, but it's unlocking the world of potential. Every single store in this chain is inadvertently doing experiments like this every day. These growth opportunities and similar problems exist in the data. If we can catch them as they're happening, we can unlock entirely new growth trajectories for the business. And so it's very exciting for us because we see this happening across every customer base. Today, Outlier is in use by media companies, consumer e-commerce businesses, pharmaceutical companies, and even financial institutions. We're working with some of the largest of the Fortune 500 companies, all the way down to some of the fastest of the high growth businesses. And for all of them, what we're doing is turning their data into competitive advantage by finding these kinds of opportunities and problems very early and very quickly so they can move faster than the competition. That's what we do here at Outlier. I'm sure you have lots of questions, so I'll hand it over to Jen to let me know what kind of questions we want to answer for you.
Excellent, Sean. Thank you for taking us through the demonstration and how a couple of customers are using the product. One particular customer or prospect is asking about fraud. They apparently want to identify some fraud within their organization. And so maybe you can talk about how other customers are doing that now.
That's a good point. So when I first started Outlier and we thought about mining through these large amounts of consumer behavioral data, looking for these insights, my assumption was that the primary use of Outlier would be finding these growth opportunities and problems. And that is true today. In many organizations, it's the marketing department that's the first department to pull Outlier in. But very quickly, we find that we move from marketing to product, marketing to finance, as there's many different use cases in organizations, especially large ones, where they have lots of data and need to find insight. And one of the ones that's been most surprising to me is that Outlier has become a very effective tool at looking for systemic fraud. So Outlier, we're not a fraud detection system. We don't look for, if you're, for example, a credit card company, we're not going to help you figure out that somebody stole my credit card and this credit card transaction was fraudulent. In fact, fraud detection is a very well-developed and mature field. What Outlier can be very good at is looking for systemic fraud, organized fraud, the kind of fraud that doesn't show up in those fraud detection systems because it's specifically designed not to. And this is becoming more common, especially with international finance in industries like credit cards and pharmaceuticals, where a well-organized systemic fraud initiative can generate millions of dollars for the criminals that pursue it. Outlier, because it's looking for these patterns and highlighting them for you, can identify when that is likely happening in ways that those transactional fraud systems cannot. And so it's become a new area for us. We're fairly new to it, but we now have customers across finance and pharmaceuticals using that use case today. And it's the kind of thing where a single catch of a systemic fraud incident can pay for Outlier for years on end. So it's very exciting to see that happening. It was an unintended use case when we started out, but it's one that's quickly becoming bigger and bigger for us.
Thank you, Sean. Another customer was asking about like the roles. You talked about data science and data engineering and then marketing as well. What about other roles within the organization? Like how does Outlier figure out what information to give each individual?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that we have today customers where we're in use across many functions, ranging from marketing to product to finance, and many levels. In most organizations, we're used by the C-level executives all the way down to the operations folks doing the day-to-day work to run the business. Across the board, how do we figure out and how do we customize the Outlier experience? Well, the good news is because Outlier is semantic free, we're not relying on business rules and configuration to provide insights. As you saw, Outlier really is a learning system. That means that in theory, you could deploy it against any function, any data set to get value from it. Now today, like I said, that primarily is things like finance and marketing. But what we find in an organization is we typically will start with a few different integrations, maybe their data warehouse, maybe some of their cloud tools. And once they see how well Outlier works, they begin to add more and more data. And those insights that you saw are very shareable and they get shared across the organization. We find that more and more functions begin using it. They pull in Outlier, they connect it to more data. And Outlier is very much designed, and our pricing, by the way, is only based on the number of integrations. So there's no charge for headcount, there's no charge for data volume. So the incentive for us and for you is to make sure that Outlier's value is matching the price. And you control that by deciding how many integrations you connect us with. And the fact that you are connecting us to integrations means that our incentive is to make sure it's valuable and you want to grow. And that's what we see with our customers today is the more they use Outlier, the more data they connect us to, the more users that use it. And it's easy to do because, again, the system's a learning system. Now, I want to point out, we don't expect you to figure all this out in the first week or two of using the product. So we actually give you an Outlier analyst on our team to co-pilot the product with you. This is someone who has experience in business intelligence and analysis, and their job is to make sure you don't have to learn how to use the product while you're learning to use the product. It's very difficult to throw software at somebody and expect them to figure it out. So we don't do that. And your Outlier analyst is with you both through your trial or pilot of the product, all the way through to becoming a customer to make sure that everyone's getting the experience they need. Because in an organization that Outlier is deployed into, it's very common that we'll get used by people who may not have experience in analytics. They may not have experience in business intelligence. We've lowered the bar so much that everybody can get an email in their inbox. And since there's no configuration on board, they can start using it, learning, and the analyst on the Outlier side can help teach them and work their way up the ladder of data-driven decision-making.
Excellent, Sean. One additional question was around integrations. You talked about a bunch of the integrations that we currently have, and then SQL native databases too. What if this person's specific integration isn't listed currently?
That's a good question. I mean, we're constantly adding more integrations. There's no specific reason why the integrations we support don't include others. So we're constantly adding new ones as our customers ask us to. What we found is that typically we'll integrate with a few cloud integrations to get started, but most customers today are pulling their data into some form of database, some sort of SQL data lake. And since we support any SQL compliant data source, we can connect to those as well. So most customers will have a handful of cloud integrations, things like Facebook ads or Google AdWords, and then very quickly integrate us to their large SQL data sets. And we support anywhere there. But if there's integrations you don't see that you want to use, we add those for our customers on a constant basis.
Excellent point. And I guess I want to point out too, like as a marketer, we use Outlier on Outlier here, and I use it on a daily basis to look at ad performance, web analytics, even email campaigns, and this helps me optimize. And using the product has taught me a lot more about it. And frankly, like seeing my marketing data within Outlier, always makes me lean forward into the product more. So one of the best ways I think to understand the product is also to do a trial. Can you mention a little bit about our trial process, Sean, and like what does that look like?
Absolutely. So we realize that you probably won't trust any demo that you see, nor should you. So we made Outlier very easy to try. We offer a 2-week risk-free trial. As you saw, the integration process is very easy. So it's not the kind of thing where you're going to invest weeks or months of your time just to get up and running. This is the kind of thing where you can be up and running with a quick trial for you very quickly. You can use the product for 2 weeks. If it works for you, great. If not, that's also okay. And you're off to the races. So it's very simple to do. We typically recommend people do trials of Outlier with a handful of integrations. You want to use more than one so you can start to see the power of the system, finding those relationships, for example, that we saw in the demo that we did here. But you don't worry about putting all your data in there because you can always add more later. So customers that we work with will just select a few and get off to the races. And as they become more familiar with the product, as they get more familiar with it, and as they decide to become customers of ours, we'll add more and more data over time. But if anybody here would like to do a trial of Outlier, we'd love to talk to you about it. It's very easy to do. And frankly, there's no better way to see how Outlier works than try it for yourself. Because once you see it working on your data and see the insights it can provide, that's when you start to see the power of this kind of new approach of automated analysis.
Excellent. And last question, you talked a little bit about fraud being used as a use case in pharmaceutical. How are our other pharmaceutical customers currently using the product? Like what use cases do they focus on?
Yeah, we work with a lot of large Fortune 500 pharmaceutical companies. The most common use case is plugging into all their commercial data around drug prescription data, drug delivery data, insurance payments, to basically understand exactly how that's happening. Usually that's fueling insights for the executive team so they can understand shifts in the market, changes around delivery, prescription patterns, perhaps the impacts of generics or those sorts of things, all the way down to the field sales team. We have a number of pharmaceutical companies deploying Outlier to their field sales team so that they can get insights about their accounts so that they know when and how they need to call on customers if things are changing. So if you have a large account with a large hospital chain and you see prescription rates changing, that's probably a very good indication you need to follow up with that account and tackle it. Likewise, if you see a growing number of patients at specific chains, it's also useful to connect with them and provide insights and share with them. And so today we find that commercial data is typically where these companies start. We then usually jump to finance data to help understand cost structures. Obviously, cost is an important part of the pharmaceutical ecosystem, all the way down to looking at manufacturing and production systems and understanding how production is affecting all those other factors in the business.
That's the end of our questions, Sean.
Excellent. Well, it's been fun to be here today. I appreciate all the questions. Like I said before, I hope everybody here decides to give Outlier a try. It'd be great to talk to you about it and answer questions you have, but it'd be even better to see you use the product and see what it can do for you. Thanks a lot for your time. I hope you have a good day.
Thank you.